Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Lady Freethinker's Activist in Action interview series. I'm Nina Jackel, founder of Lady Freethinker, a nonprofit media organization dedicated to exposing and stopping suffering of animals, humans, and the planet. We publish urgent news articles and petitions to promote humane treatment of all species, and our petitions have collectively gained over 15 million signatures, directly saving animals' lives and putting important cruelty cases right in front of the eyes of decision makers. Today, we are so excited to speak with Linda Goodman, longtime animal activist and founder of Care and Respect Includes All Dogs, or Cariad, and they're an organization working to end puppy farming. Based in Wales, Linda works toward campaigning, educating, and supporting rescues and other animal welfare organizations, as well as performing investigations and lobbying for animal rights. Linda, before we get started, did I miss anything, or would you like to share a bit more on your background?
Well, my background is kind of quite varied. I think most people who know me now think of me as dog welfare campaigner, but to be honest, it started when I was a kid. I was really lucky because I had parents who were so very respectful of the environment and of animals. My mum was campaigning for animals sort of long before it was even a thing to really do. So I grew up with a mum who was, out there campaigning against the Canadian harp seal slaughter or for better treatment of farm animals. And my dad, who also was a great animal lover, but was very much a man who, if he saw an injustice and an underdog, he would get in there and fight for them. So in that background, I was kind of a ready-made animal welfare campaigner in many.
Yeah, so it sounds like you were born that way almost.
Well,
Born
yeah,
into
when
it.
I was very young, I started, I guess, my first campaign, which was an anti-fur campaign. So I started making T-shirts when I was about 10, with a slogan on it that was like, "Only animals wear fur."
Wow.
And then after that, I guess when I was in my 20s, I started to do a lot of investigation into the treatment of cetaceans, got involved with whales and dolphin conservation. In my 30s, I got involved with uh, Western lowland gorillas, completely separate issue, but one that was really, really important to me. And I was a huge, and still am a huge fan of Dr. Jane Goodall's work. And, I was really fortunate because I got to work with an organization that was had a breeding program here, and they reintroduced them into the wild in Gabon. But, just such amazing work, such inspiring people. And then after that, it was horse welfare, 10 years in horse welfare, rehabilitating older horses, veteran horses, creating awareness about the value of horses when they aren't able to be ridden anymore, are still wonderful creatures that can be wonderful companions. And then a slightly ill-fated campaign with my late husband, which was called the Senior Dog Society. We always adopted older dogs because they were always the ones that seemed to be the hardest to rehome. And we wanted to raise the profile of older dogs because they seem to be so overlooked. And that's going back quite a long, long time now, long before the pet industry really got involved in creating even dog food that was specific to older dogs. And I think the problem with that was it was a little bit before its time. So, but then again, I learned at every step something new about campaigning or about the obstacles that get in the way. So I think maybe all of those experiences have served really well for what we're doing now.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic that you work to save so many different kinds of animals. For those who aren't familiar with your current organization, can you explain why you decided to found Cariad and what its areas of focus are?
Cariad's a Welsh word. It means love, beloved,
Oh,
which seems so appropriate for dogs. And I had a dog called Cariad. And the campaign itself started out as quite I guess, a modest campaign to raise awareness about what was going on in Wales in puppy farms. And the reason that I started it was because I had adopted a golden retriever who was 7 years old, and she had come from a dreadful licensed puppy farm, and she had been so used and abused, and I was so shocked because actually at the time I didn't know that much about puppy farming, and yet I was living right in the heart of puppy farming country. She had as I say, she was in this place for 7 years. Luckily, she'd had a wonderful foster family look after her in the interim before I adopted her. But she was so scared, and she had her front teeth were broken off at the gum line from chewing on bars. Her beautiful face, was all scarred from fighting with other dogs, possibly for food. Her claws had never been clipped. She had sort of banana claw hand paws, and her undercarriage had been on the floor. That's how many litters she'd had. She had 9 mammary tumors removed, and the vet, very kindly, who did the mammary strip, decided that the kindest thing to do for her was to do basically a tummy tuck, so she didn't have all this stuff swaying. So she really drew my attention to the shocking abuse and neglect and exploitation of these dogs. And I was so horrified. This was basically happening in my backyard, you know. And then there happened to be a protest in one of the counties renowned for having a lot of puppy farms. Mm-hmm. And I'd never been to a protest here before. And I just thought, I must go. Hopefully there'll be no violence. It won't be like that. Anyway, it turned out, and it was all people sort of like me, really concerned people from all different backgrounds who just did not want this huge puppy farm that had been planned to be extended to get its license granted, but it did. But that was kind of where I met a lot of people, decided that actually rather than being a fragmented group of people campaigning, we should all do something together. Got involved with lots of local rescues who kind of joined up, and that's kind of how it all started. Where it's gone from there is somewhere else, more than I imagined would happen. But yeah, those were the very early days.
Yeah, no, it's been doing fantastic. So for people who aren't quite familiar with how a puppy farm operates, can you just explain, what they do and, what these dogs are going through?
I think the first thing, a lot of people, there's a misconception that puppy farming is an illegal activity, and it's not. If you have a license, a dog breeding license, you can be a puppy farmer. And that in itself is pretty shocking. There are no upper limits, there's no upper threshold for how many dogs you can have in one of these establishments if you can prove that you have enough staff to look after them. Of course, it is impossible to enforce that side of those regulations unless you sit outside a puppy farm 24 hours a day. You don't know if there are enough staff there to look after them. But regardless of that, it is the institutionalized factory farming of dogs in order to produce puppies. And the quality of life the breeding dogs have in these establishments, just as they are the same in puppy mills in the States, puppy factories in Australia, we have different names for them. They all equate to the same thing. These are dogs that just aren't allowed to be dogs. They have no life. They have one purpose for these people, and that is to be a renter womb, basically. Produce as many litters as possible, and then when you can't do it anymore, you are surplus to requirements, and usually you are dispensed with. And I'll leave it to your imagination to how many ways that can happen.
Right. Yeah, that's horrifying. It really is. Yeah, thank you for explaining that, because I think a lot of people don't fully understand, how bad these are and how prevalent they are. So, in your experiences with Cariad and other activism, what have been some of the most memorable or moving things that you've seen?
Wow. Okay, there are. I think over the last nearly 10 years of doing this, there's been a lot of crying involved. I can't lie. A lot of things that you can never unsee.
Mm-hmm.
But there are different types of moving moments, and I'll give you an example of a couple. There's the type of moving moment that stays with you for life when you have a dog that has just come out of one of these establishments that has never experienced a kind touch from a human being, and you pick them up and you hold them and they cling to you for dear life. They cling to you like a baby would cling to you, and they're trembling and they're just so scared and they won't let go. They instinctively seem to know that you're going to help them, but they're just so desperate. When you look at one of those dogs, when they look at your when you look in the eyes of a dog like that, if indeed they can look in your eyes, because so many of them won't even look, that breaks your heart. It just breaks your heart because, and I've had this experience with lots of different breeds, small and large dogs. Cavaliers are the ones that stick in my mind as being the real heartbreakers, because I guess because in some ways they remind you of little children, little vulnerable kids, and with their great big eyes and their beautiful little faces. And yeah, that's one thing that I always remember, a pair of Cavaliers coming straight to my house for sort of evaluation and before we took them onto a rescue. Wow. Then there's the other kind of emotion, which is an emotion that is heartbreak and anger. And that's when you're faced with a decision to have to hold a beautiful dog while they're being put to sleep because they're so badly damaged or they're so ill that all you can do is give them a good death. So those are the kind of things that you never forget. Um, there's all sorts of emotions involved in doing this. There's the frustration emotion when people who you think should be helping the situation are actually getting in the way and trying to prevent improvements. There's a number of things.
And why? I'm just going back to that. Why do people get in the way who you would think would be helping?
Yeah, interesting one, that, because it's something you find obviously not just here, but anywhere you are campaigning for an end to puppy farming. You will find that there is either an industry or an organization or a bunch of organizations who really don't want the problem to go away because it doesn't suit their financial interest or business models.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, for example, in the States, you have big agri. Now, they get in the way with a lot of.
Clearly, yes.
Um, over here, you have, strangely enough, you have some charities who actually have become very, very wealthy and powerful, who are not happy about the thought that perhaps there could be less dogs around to fulfill their business model.
I see.
Um, in Australia, you've got perhaps pet industry there who are concerned that, if that whole pet shop thing stops, it will affect their sales.
Right.
So you've always got at the end, and it's not just true of dogs, dog welfare, it's true of any animal welfare or environmental issue. At the end of the day, the things that get in the way are money
Right.
and people's desire to maintain a status quo because it suits the shareholders or it suits, you know, bank balances. If you put money aside, there's a solution to absolutely every animal welfare issue.
Yeah.
And you know that that's true as far as whether it's canned hunting, whether it's greyhound racing, whatever it is.
Yeah. The fur industry comes to mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's very true and very unfortunate. Um, well, thank you for sharing all that. And for my last question, I'd just like to know what's in store for you and for Cariad, and what's the best way for people to follow your work?
Well, the future is an interesting prospect for us now because obviously we've just achieved a change in the law in England with Lucy's Law,
Mhm.
and with my amazing friend and fellow companion, Mark Abraham, who I know you've already interviewed.
It's our first
Well,
guest.
we've got Wales now, which hopefully will be the next to adopt Lucy's Law. Then we'll go on to Scotland. In fact, wherever we can go with it, we're going to go with it, because we need to secure the mainland against imports. And the best way to do that is to prevent third-party dealing. In terms of the road for Cariad, really before Christmas, we launched a new initiative called Foster First, because we realised that alongside the issue of shutting down puppy farms, we needed to make sure that there were things in place so that the dogs from these breeding establishments had somewhere to go. And somewhere safe to go, where they could be rehabilitated and actually live the lives that they were, or should have always been theirs. And we also noted that there were so many small rescues out there who were struggling to be able to take in enough dogs that needed homes. Because, you know, the big charities will take, the big rescues will take in X amount of dogs. They might not take in harder to rehome dogs because, you know, but a lot of the time it's the small rescues picking up the pieces. And the best thing for dogs that have come out of breeding establishments is not to go into a kennel situation. They need to go straight into a home environment where they can learn how to, you know, become dogs, basically, in the company of another calm dog, so that they can learn. So we thought, right, well, there are already, you know, hundreds of dogs coming out of these establishments as a result of Lucy's Law, even before it became law.
Well, that's fantastic.
Which is, yeah, fantastic indeed. And suddenly the smaller rescues were, oh my God, we desperately need fosterers. This is such a great idea. So we're kind of we've sort of put fostering in the spotlight, because it also means that, yeah, there are some dogs that don't do well in kennels. It makes them harder to rehome if they spend too long in kennels. There are people fleeing domestic abuse who need somewhere safe for their dogs and cats, etc., to go so that they can flee that abuse. There's a terrible loneliness in society with older people who would do so well having a companion from time to time, but without having the worry or long-term commitment. So it's kind of a win-win situation. I think we've got about 60 rescues now involved in Foster First, and not just dogs, but cats, horses, donkeys, you name it. So that's pretty exciting. And I think what it's done is it's spurred us off to have even more initiatives like this to help solve problems. We're very much about solving problems. We don't make money out of it. We don't, you know, it's really just put the animals at the front and center. What's best for them? What do they need? How can we make it happen? And so I think more initiatives like Foster First, which, and a big shout out to Anna Cossart, who's an amazing volunteer who is running the whole program for us. She's already saved hundreds of dogs just since, you know, before Christmas.
Wow, it's amazing.
So, yeah, when you see results like that, you know, it took us nearly 10 years to get Lucy's Law, but other things that you can do that can have an immediate, tangible impact on the lives of dogs, that's really rewarding. So I think that's where we'll be doing a lot more work in the future. So as long as we're all still alive and well doing,
Right.
it.
And where can people find you online?
Well, our website is www.cariadcampaign.co.uk. You'll find us on Facebook at Cariad. You'll find us on Twitter at Cariad Campaign. And also, I really hope people will visit Foster First, which has got its own website, which is www.fosterfirst.co.uk, and on Facebook, which is at Foster First, and on Twitter, which is at Foster First. So, you know, it's been so good to be able to have the opportunity to talk to you about this, because, you know, so often when we do interviews, they're very, very short and you don't get a chance to go into more detail. So it's been really great to be able to do this.
Well, thank you. And I just appreciate listening to all you have to say, because you have so much knowledge. And I just want to say that it makes me feel hopeful. I know that it'll, help our readers feel hopeful, because sometimes it feels hopeless. And just knowing that these dogs are being saved because of the hard work of people like you.
There
And
are
that's
many people
incredible.
that like me, you know, it's not just me. There's lots of people out there, good people, And the volunteers are the ones really, you know, without volunteers, we wouldn't be able to do anything. You know, they're really, it's true of pretty much every kind of environment where help is needed across the world. The volunteers, they make a difference. They're, in this case, for animals, they're a lifeline, you know. And the thing is, people always say, what's the most important quality in a person? Or what's the one thing that's the most important thing in the world? A lot of people say love, and I always say kindness,
Mm-hmm.
because actually kindness is the starting point for everything positive, every positive quality anyone can have. If you're kind, then you know what love is, you know what compassion is, you're generous of spirit. And if everyone could be kind to each other, to the environment, to animals, and I know I sound like I'm kind of preaching here, I don't mean to, but kindness is a quality that I admire most in my friends and my fellow colleagues, and I love them for it. So that's kind of my message, which is, we can all make a difference, and it starts with being kind.
Yeah, no, that's very nice. That's well said. Well, Linda, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. We love everything you're doing and look forward to continuing your journey. For those watching, thank you for checking out this episode of Lady Free. Oh, hello.
It is Alice, little puppy farm survivor. I forgot to say.
Oh, what a sweetie pie. Well, for everyone watching, thank you so much. And be sure to check out our other episodes of Lady Freethinker's Activist in Action series. And stay tuned for more episodes. And for more information on our organization, please visit ladyfreethinker.org, or you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Lady Freethinker.